Thanks very much. It's exciting and fun to be here. I live in Minneapolis, St. Paul, and after I was invited to this session, I called the Minnesota High Tech Association and said, how come I have to go to Philadelphia to talk about art and tech when we should be talking about it here? So we'll see if I can talk them into doing something. I'd also like to thank Josh from Blue Cadet for the best setup I've ever had for a talk, and I'm hoping he always comes and talks before I do. Last year I was fortunate to spend a big chunk of the year doing research on behalf of the WinCode Foundation here in Philly about the ways that legacy institutions are investing in digital technology. And I wanted to just stop for a second and tell you what we mean by legacy. We looked at organizations that are not founder-led, that have kind of made it to the next generation, that actually eliminates a large number of cultural institutions. We know that it eliminated a lot of institutions that are very vibrant and interesting, but they weren't what we were looking at places where there'd been deep and long-standing community investment and where there were considerable assets and history held. And we were also looking for places that had, we knew were pretty far along on their digital journey. So I looked at grants databases. There's a nice map of the US where you can drill into cities and see who the top funders and top recipients of media funding in America are, if you haven't seen it. So I used that. I called around a bunch of grant makers nationally and also talked to peer institutions. And we ended up identifying 40 organizations. We're not trying to be definitive. We were looking for examples, so some are left off. They're diverse geographically, by arts discipline, and by the kinds of investments they're making. Then out of those, I picked 8 and got to go meet them and talk in depth about what they're doing, see their internal documents and all that kind of stuff. Went to a bunch of meetings, followed a bunch of Twitterers, and in general, immersed myself. And we're thinking of this not as a report, but more as an initiative, and this is our presentation and learning year. So if what you see you disagree with violently or have had other experiences you want to share, I'm pretty easy to find in social media. So we came up with, by the way, this image. If you go on the website like linkshare.org, you'll find a gallery of the 40 organizations. Some have pretty long case studies, some are briefer, with links out to all their projects. Where they've done formal evaluation that seem really interesting and applicable, I try to link to those. I hope you'll find the site worthwhile. It also contains the report. We brought about 50 of them here. They're at the registration desk. They're expensive to print and they are digital. And this is a conference about digital, so feel free to download it or read it online as well. Also, just one more quick thing. On May 12th, I'm going to give a much longer and more workshop-oriented presentation about this at Drexel at Youngwoo's invitation. It's at 6 o'clock at the Excite Center, and it's free and open to anybody. So our themes that we found across the organizations, here I have, voila. The first, thank you, Josh, is that you need to have a strategy to succeed digitally. There's just too much spaghetti to throw at too many walls to not decide in advance what your organizational objectives are and how digital is going to link. Many of the leading institutions we looked at were very far along with this, and their KPIs are all different. There's no one size fits all. There's nothing you can look at and say that's exactly what you want to do. It has to fit you. The second thing is thinking about capabilities, not about cool projects. It was great to see Clip Collective's cool project, but you can also see the amount of work that Longwood Gardens has done to set the stage for a project like that through all of their previous work. The third thing we found is that everybody's messing with their organization chart because you can't figure out where digital goes. And that's because digital is enterprise-wide. So if you have it in your finance department or your marketing department or your exhibitions department, wherever it is, it's probably not going to stay there for long. Most people are getting a digital officer of some kind somewhere on the senior management team. The report has some visuals about that that shows how that's working. The fourth theme was the way that digital forces an opening of institutions to put audiences first. On digital, audiences are in charge of what they look, how long they look at it, and in what sequence they look at it. Your orderly sequence that you wanted to produce, or sequence that we're so used to for a linear experience of live art, just doesn't work in digital at all. And as we see and can track what audiences actually do online, we have to reorganize and think about things in different ways. And then the final theme is people are figuring out how to accelerate revenue through digital channels. It may be that it's easier to process certain kinds of payments you were already processing online versus through a box office or other means. It may be crowdsourcing, it may be any number of other ways of doing it. I met with people who syndicate content, who offer projects through third-party media sources, all kinds of ways that people, once they have things up and running, are figuring out where to get money from it. But I do want to emphasize that the amount of money that they're getting is nothing close to the investments that they're making. That doesn't mean we shouldn't be trying. So as I mentioned, if you visit the web gallery, you can see much more about this. You'll see projects like online projects taking our work into the home, like World Ballet Day, which was a 20-hour global streaming day that followed different ballet companies across the world as they rehearsed and performed. It was actually very cool. Or webcasting live concerts, such as the Detroit Symphony does with, they're actually doing one right now, this very second. You could be watching DSO live. Or things on site, like we just saw Live Note. This is a really neat in-gallery example from the Cleveland Museum of Art, where you make a shape, the computer recognizes it and shows you a work of art from the collection that is making the same shape as you. Or apps that belong in the gallery that give you contextual information about what you're seeing. So I wanted to talk a little bit today about what happens when we show people this work. And there was a question earlier like, oh my goodness, this all costs a lot, what am I gonna do? In fact, I see a form of paralysis usually when I make the presentation, because if I show videos and a lot of work samples, a lot of people feel like they're far behind. So let's look at the internal factors that kind of force you into this sense that you're not doing enough. And then my encouragement that if you're feeling energy, harness it in a good direction. So relevance, advancing your mission, learning and growing, being influential, and just learning to be digital. And then from the outside, we have huge audience expectations, a sense that others are succeeding. The cost of entry seems lower, the pace of change is faster, so it's so big, like do something feeling that one gets of looking at all of this. So I thought I'd just break things down a little bit. Where would you start if you wanted to start? And getting back to Youngwoo's presentation, which was great, and his slides are so much fancier, it just doesn't seem fair, does it? But really, I thought I'd just break it down in an iterative process, and it starts at the top. I'm trying to figure out where you're starting from. Like, there's no right or wrong from where you start, it's just where you do start. Ooh, okay. I just got my 1 minute sign, so I'll go really fast. Start where you are, figure out where you want to go, that's the vision. Figure out your immediate next steps. What can you do tomorrow? Someone said, well, we haven't measured. Well, maybe measuring is your first step. Then once you've measured, learn from that, iterate, and start again. This is not like a capital campaign where you're going to figure everything out in advance and then fund it and then build it. This is going to be an ongoing process where mistakes, if you want to call them that, and trial and error is used. And so I do have my values and mindset slide, and I do want to cover, especially the speed bump side. I think the rules of the road are something the presentation will be posted. But the speed bumps that I've seen are just a weak stomach for making the priorities that need to be made. You're not going to be able to do everything, and that means you're going to have to say no to some people and departments. Loss of or lack of funding, turnover in your tech staff, internal politics because you don't agree on the vision, you're out of alignment, your senior leader changes and suddenly your cheese is in a new place. And also the last one, which is bad advice from powerful influencers. You can get the people who say, we need an app, we just need an app, we should have an app, when an app might be the last thing you need rather than the first thing. So I say get started, small steps are okay, begin the journey, make it fun, and try to enjoy the iterative process which comes so naturally to creative people. And here are a few things to think about. What experience do you actually want your audience to have, not only in person but online? Who in your organization already knows more about this than you do, and try to tap everyone's expertise no matter where they are in the organizational chart. And finally, can you shift from this try-fail, we tried it, it failed mindset, into a mindset that's about organizational learning? And that's my time. Thank you very much.